I got into this field to learn how to save my dad, right? And like bring him back, and then so I can thank him for my career for sure, right? Because I never would have even found an interest in it, and then only to be kind of disappointed to learn that that's not my responsibility.
Welcome to the Sober Spill podcast. I'm your host, Isabel. On this podcast, we have real conversations with people in recovery, their families, and organizations that pertain to this field. Today, I'm here with the host of the clinical side of our podcast, Jana Wu.
Thank you, Isabel. My guests will discuss best clinical practices, new emerging trends in substance use and mental health disorders, and how we can best take care of ourselves and our loved ones in recovery.
See you every Thursday.
And come spill with us soon.
My name is Isabel Donnelly. Welcome back to the Sober Spill. Today I'm here with my friend, colleague, woman I care for, Candace. For the people that don't know you, who are you?
I'm Candace. I am a licensed therapist. I've worked here for almost 9 years now, but I've been in the field since I was 18. And in 2 years, I would have dedicated half my life to serving people who struggle with addiction, and it's something wonderful and that I'm passionate about.
That feels so crazy. Like when I look back on my resume, I mean, to be like, I'm 27, but my entire professional life has been like working in this field.
Yes. It's a wild feeling.
What was your first job at 18?
My first job, that wasn't my first job, but my first job in the field, yeah. So I was a detox tech. And then I did utilization review for insurance with them. And then the same company, I ended up like taking over their court contracts for a couple of their locations. So I worked primarily with probation, parole, family services for the state of Connecticut. And then I went to methadone maintenance in Virginia, which was definitely an interesting experience. And then I came to Mountainside.
That's a wrap.
I mean, a little bit more than that, but yeah. It's a wrap on my resume.
Yeah. I check her out on LinkedIn. But I mean, we'll get into I feel like working in the social services field, I was joking around with clients where I'm like, if you work in a treatment center, either like you are, and that you're trying to get like your LCSW to getting your hours, or something's like going wrong at some point in your life that's like pointed you in this direction.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
Like you're so consistent. And so we'll get into more of your story, which makes it more apparent as to why you ended up in these hallowed halls.
My dream was to never be a therapist. Never even thought twice about it. So
when you were a kid, what'd you want to be?
I wanted to be a cop. So, that was, I would say that was probably like a 14, 15-year-old me dream, which is actually kind of wild when we start getting into the story a little bit. It's like complete opposite side.
I always think you'd be in your like F the police phase.
Yeah. Never was an F the police. I definitely respected what they did. However, I don't think they necessarily respected what I was doing at the time,
Which was fair.
Yeah, fair.
Or danger to yourself and others.
Definitely. But when I was like a kid, right?
Yeah.
Like all of us, like we kind of want to, we see certain things in our parents that we kind of like and we want to be, right? And my dad was a truck driver and he lived like this it felt like a very free life. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy a tractor trailer truck.
Love.
I am going to, they're so nice on the inside, like such a good setup. I was like, I'm going to drive at night to make money. And during the day, because I'm from Florida, right? I'm going to park on the beach, right? And I'm just going to lay out all day on the beach and then I'll drive again at night. To me, that just sounded like the perfect life.
That's a very Florida aspiration, I feel like. That's a very Florida code.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's funny. When I was in the 4th grade, I used to tell everyone I wanted to be the vice president because saying president felt too like
too big of aspirations,
too mainstream.
Oh,
I'm different, and it's so funny because it's translated into adulthood. I'm like a poli-sci major with like a minor in American history, so it's like the interest was pure and true, and I've been true to myself since I was a child. But
yeah,
that's no longer the ending point.
I mean, you might.
I cry
never say shit
when I get like angry or sad or happy or excited. Could be a problem.
You just have a tearful high profile.
Yeah, I just have big eyes. Yeah. So taking it back a little bit, you have a really crazy story. When I first started working at Mountainside, for context, Candace was the one that hired me. She was my manager. And we both were living in Winstead at one point, and I went back to your house, and you told me, you basically gave me like the breakdown, kind of like the play-by-play of your whole story, and it's an exceptional one. Like, it's one that essentially, it could have ended in a lot of different ways. Not that we're at the end by any means, but you could have ended up in a lot of different places. This one feels unlikely, given like where you started.
Yeah, it definitely feels unlikely to me. I actually wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, certainly beat the odds. And also, you're kind of an example of the system actually working for you. Like, you have people in place that assisted you along the way.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to take it back a little bit? Like, where do we find a young Candace? Like, what was going on for you at the time?
What age do we want to go back to? 4?
In case he's saying 4.
JK.
We can go back to 5.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So, so I actually met my dad when I was 5. He did not know anything about me. So it's a kind of unique thing. He was, if any of you are familiar with like the Chatham Fair, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like this big fair in upstate New York. One of my mom's old high school friends who also knew my dad, that's how they met, was like, hey, you have a daughter. Saw him there. I was like, hey, you have a daughter. Did you know? And I ended up meeting him a couple weeks later. And I've never loved something more in my life, right? My parents are young, right? So I very much remember when I met my dad, he was 22 and I was 5. So we grew up together and I watched him grow up, right? So it's very interesting to be at this age now where I'm 31 and I remember my dad's like 25th birthday.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing to kind of put yourself in those shoes, because I don't think a lot of people have had that experience of knowing their parents while they were growing up, right? Like, so I knew my dad before his prefrontal cortex was developed. My mom too.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, it's very interesting. So my dad went to court for custody, so I'm an only child from my dad. From my mom, I do have a half brother. He's about 8 years younger than me. And my dad ended up getting custody, right? And we moved to Florida, and I spent most of my teenage years in Florida.
So, growing up, so your dad gets custody. You're no longer living with your mom. What are some of the feelings that you're having? Because it's already like you've had a tumultuous upbringing up until that point. Like, what was the internal narrative like?
Exciting. A little nerve-wracking, because I very much, I was very like emotionally advanced even at a young age.
Do you think you're parentified?
So yeah, I definitely feel like I was parentified to a certain extent, right? I also feel like I have always had this ability to like absorb and kind of learn from the people around me, not as a follower by any means, because my childhood best friend Kim will tell you, like, I have always been
Oh yeah, Candace is very assuredly Candace. If someone's gonna move a mountain, it's her.
Yes. If we're lost in the woods, there's probably no need to worry, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If we need to live off the land, I could probably figure it out.
Yeah, you're someone I trust in a situation like that, genuinely. They take care of me.
Yeah. So I think I've always really had those traits in me, right? But I definitely think that had a lot to do with it, for sure.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And how did that, and so growing up, like having parents that, like your dad, like you said, didn't have his frontal cortex fully developed.
Nor would anybody.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, that wasn't just like a him issue. It's just like a growth issue.
Yeah.
You weren't parented super closely and you got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I think also like because by the time it was like buckle down parenting, right? Like, cause like as my parents are growing and learning, And just to clarify in context, my parents have never really been together. So I don't really know what that's like either. Like I'm not a child of divorce because I don't know what it's like for them to be together. But there was definitely by the time that part of like my parents triggered of like rules, expectation, that kind of stuff, I was not having it.
Yeah, it was in preemptive. It was in response to behavior that was coming up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was definitely something where I was like, wait a second. Like, I think every kid has had this thought process of like, I don't need to be told what to do, but I think my thought process went almost a little bit deeper of like, who are you to tell me what to do?
Yeah, and that's super common with parentified kids.
Yeah.
It's like I've been taking care of myself to a certain extent. Like I've been handling my own stuff to a certain extent.
Not handling it great, right? But surviving.
Yeah. I'm getting through. Yeah.
Like inconsistent trauma response mode, but I'm surviving.
Yeah, I'm in fight or flight. We'll process this in like 10 to 20 years, but like right now it's working. Compartmentalize, baby. Shove that shit to the back. And were you were in school? Were you doing well in school? Were you engaged as a student? Like, did you find any?
Oh, absolutely not. So I'm like a little, definitely I'm diagnosed ADHD, right? Obviously I have the coping skills now and the techniques to overcome it. However, there are definitely some key specific things that I don't love about the school system and how it's set up in general, right? The bright fluorescent lights, like sitting in one place for long periods of time. The punishment, for example, it's so funny. My husband was telling me that him and a couple boys like used to be rowdy in elementary school, and like their punishment to them, like, just being like normal rowdy boys was pulling away recess. And like my thought process is like the complete opposite of like, get those kids out there.
Yeah.
Like let them get tired.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, that that's definitely a part of it where it wasn't my learning style.
Totally.
So I just decided not to do it. So in Florida, they have about like, I don't know, 8-foot fences going like around the schools. I used to think it was to keep the alligators out.
And now it's to keep you guys in.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually convinced my dad to buy me a pair of Pumas because they're like a skinny sneaker, so I could hop fences easily.
Yeah, they don't weigh you down at all.
And even to this day, I'm like, who was I to hop 8-foot chain link fences? Like what?
In parkour, you're like a Belgian Malibon.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So they have these advisors that drive around on golf carts that like monitor like the campus.
Yeah.
And like they were great to an extent of like, they'd let us go out to smoke, right? And like come back across.
You go out to smoke.
Yeah. Like I can't smoke on school grounds, but like they'll watch us.
Yeah, it would be crazy.
Yeah, and come back. A different time. But I like knew their path, and the campuses are so big. It's like a college campus almost. So as soon as I was like out of view, I would just scurry up the fence. And then my house was like 3 miles away from a school. So I was not only like jumping these 8-foot fences, I was like then like running a mile to make sure nobody saw me, and like going home, walking home another 2 miles.
Yeah, and it's crazy to expect kids also because like schools aren't well equipped, especially then, still not really now too much for like neurodiversity. So it's like any form of like ADHD or any form of neurodiversity isn't going to like click super well. There are more resources, I think, at this point. But
but I also think I never presented that way in that sense where it presented in a different way where it was like, I'm just not going to do it because like I don't like this and I'm not benefiting from it versus like asking for help, right?
Totally.
But yeah, so I moved to Florida. I met my best friend Ashley, still best friends to this day. We actually use each other as like motivational support for housework.
Nice.
So like we FaceTime and then we'll do the dishes, we'll like do the laundry. So we definitely keep that relationship going. But we met at a very weird time where it was she was from a similar household, right? As far as like the parentified household. And had a lot of trauma as well. And we, I was an angry kid, like an angry teenager. It definitely, that trauma and that feeling came out in like this angry way. I did, in my mind, I rationalized it by I channeled it into like always sticking up for the underdog. Right. So like that was like my rationale. So I was never a bully or anything of that nature. It was more so like I was the person who was like going to like put the bully in their place.
Well, it's actually also a trait with neurodiversity, ADHD, a strong sense of justice is how they determine in there too.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, so we actually met, I was like going to fight her because like I had like this misinterpretation, and then I met her, and she is a lot, she's like 5'9" to like my 5'4", we met, and like, we were like, like ankle deep sugar sand in the power lines in Florida, like at a little party.
You didn't want the smoke.
And I walked up to her and I was like, like I said, like I've always been very blunt. And I was like, this is what I was going to do. However, I don't think it's the best option for me.
That's beautiful.
And then
conflict resolution.
Yep. And we just hit it off, and really it was just, it was just us for a long time. We really kind of, I almost want to say that at that point in our lives, like we kind of saved each other, right? We're exactly what each other needed at the time. And even still to this day, we're kind of what each other needs, if that makes sense. So, so like, now we're really what we kind of grew together in life. I'm a big believer that you grow together, you grow apart, right? People go through these changing periods. And I'm pretty sure I actually put this in like your wedding advice card. People go through these, especially when you're with somebody for a long time, or you have a long-term friendship or something of that nature. People grow at different times, at different paces. And I feel like these, the way it's almost set up the way like the school system's set up with how you like grow, right? These like big changes in your life. So if you think about it, like every 5 years. So like you go to kindergarten, then you're in 5th grade, right? Now you're going to high school. So it's like the way it's set up. Now you're graduating now you're going into college. That's a big life thing. Now you're graduating college. Like, so these like 4 to 5 year periods of like these big like changes, that doesn't stop when you become an adult. So it's very interesting. I don't think a lot of people have been able to have that experience where they have not only their partner, but like also like a best friend that they've grown with through all of these life changes.
Certainly. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in, I was saying to a friend recently where I'm someone that like I love and appreciate having very deep and poignant like female friendships, and having the realization where like I had loaned a book to a friend and I found like a note in it, and it just like I know her, I like recognize her handwriting, let me know like her smell, stuff like that. Like I think that's very special and very enriching and meaningful. Being able to grow with someone is a great pleasure. But I mean, when you talk about your friendship, like needing each other at that time and being able to like, it's almost a protective factor in that way. We've talked about how your dad struggled with alcoholism. Was this something that you felt like you had to escape and seek outside support for at that point?
That was around the time that I didn't really realize exactly what was happening, right? Because like my pop, drank, right? And my dad drank, and my dad is not, it's a little difficult because when my dad drinks, there's the perception that he's really only hurting himself, because mentally like personality wise, that doesn't change very drastically from his drinking. Like it doesn't make him like abusive or a bad person or anything of that nature, right? Like it's actually pretty normal. But he, that was right around the time where my dad would switch from beer to rum, right? And I didn't really think too much of it at the time. I think it was more so the counteracting from our parents, like you shared before, like being parentified, and that like we were both in that same situation where it's like the pushback of like, and to be honest, we both humbled ourselves a lot over the years, right? We had to, because that's kind of like the start of like a know-it-all personality, right? It's like, I don't want to, there's a difference between confidence and having a healthy ego and having a know-it-all personality, right?
100p.
Yeah. So that for both of us had to be like brought back real quick. But that's kind of where we were. And at the time it felt like we were kind of the only two people who understood each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have the words at the time. Because obviously a lot of times it's like kids pick up, like when their parents are drinking, what something's going on. Like they're aware that something's happening, but they don't necessarily have like the emotional vocabulary to express how they're feeling about it, to name what's going on. But there's the awareness of something's like off.
It took a while to get there because, like I said, it's very different if you have a parent or a loved one or somebody that you care about who their personality changes.
Yeah, but it was just consistent.
But it was like a slow progression of consistency. And it, like, my brain at the time was like, it's Florida, it's hot,
It's Florida.
and like maybe he just isn't interested in beer anymore and he likes the taste of Coca-Cola and rum a little better, you know?
Exotic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And maybe it did start like that, right? We don't talk about that. To be honest, I don't even start any words with like,
Yeah.
you know, AA, alcoholism. That's not I stop at.
That's an emotionally reactive topic.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely is. But even now, which we'll get into a little bit about what our relationship looks like now, but it's, yeah, there's definitely been progression, but I mean, that's the reason why I got into this field, right? And which is very interesting. And I think we got to go back a little bit in a minute, but it's very interesting because I got into this field to learn how to save my dad, right? And like bring him back. And then, so I can thank him for my career for sure, right? Because I never would have even found an interest in it. And then only to be kind of disappointed to learn that that's not my responsibility.
Yeah. Did you ever seek out Al-Anon for that, or is that something that you came to in your own time?
So I just went to AA, like non-Al-Anon.
Funny, yeah.
Working in the field, so that was great. And I went to the same Saturday morning AA meeting every single week, and I heard a lot of the same experiences and very similar, and I think I benefited more from the other side of the spectrum of actually hearing people who were going through it or went through it in real time than people who were on the same level of me of seeking support for it. Does that make sense? So
that does make sense.
That was my support. And, I really do, I decided to live by the motto of like helping others to help yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, I went to therapy.
Gorgeous.
That was a little later on.
Love.
Hi, I'm Ricky, recovery support clinician here at Mountainside. Mountainside's Brighter Future Scholarship application opens September 2025. If you're a high school senior living in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or Massachusetts, and your life has been touched by addiction, we want to help you in pursuing your educational goals. Share your journey in an essay at mountainside.com for a chance to be chosen. We can't wait to hear your story.
So obviously all of this part of your story takes place in Florida. We know you made it up to Connecticut. Break it down for us. The series of events, the calamitous series of events that led to you entering the Grand Constitution State. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the welcome.
Yeah.
This is definitely home now.
Yeah.
So like I said, like I was a little bit of an angry kid, right? So, even before that time, I think it's like important to kind of touch on. And I think I said, I was a stick up for the underdog person, right? I definitely got into some fights, right? I had this, this kind of falls into this, right? This story, because it really falls into the different people that came into my life and saw something in me in little ways and big ways at different times that I couldn't see in myself, right? So Mr. Faziola, right? My 8th grade teacher, he, has pulled me off a couple fights, right? And he's a big guy and he would just wrap me up, sit me in his classroom. And then he actually became the vice principal of my high school too. So that, there was a couple fights in high school, right, where it was the same exact thing. Wrapped me up. And, at the beginning of COVID, I would probably say about 5 months into COVID, when you really started to hear about like how much teachers were struggling, right? Because, we were in the thick of it. Still, some of the few people who are, yes, our policies and procedures changed, but our work, didn't change very much. We were still coming in every day, serving people and doing what we do, right?
Significantly different.
Yeah. And so I actually reached out to him, and he got back to me within like 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Chronically
online.
Yeah, well, he was. I mean,
Yeah.
he was teaching online, right? And I just like reached out to him and was like, not sure if you remember me. Here's a little bit about like what you've done for me. And where I'm at today, and how I know that a lot of teachers are struggling right now because of COVID and like the change. But I just want to let you know that like while you're going through this time, you really made a difference, right? You saw this angry kid, and you knew there was like something deeper, right? Than just like, you knew it was like sadness versus being like, oh, she has anger issues.
Right. Someone's like, she's a bad kid.
Yeah.
I always hate that generalization.
Yeah, for sure. And, he wrote me back so quickly and was like, of course I remembered you. Like, and, we went through this whole, breakdown, and it was really wonderful to reconnect. And then, so, my last fight that I ever got in, was in school, and it ended up, leading me to be arrested for assault and battery.
Also, knock on wood, last fight to date.
Yes, last fight to date. It's wild when you're like, when you change as a human, and how you process things and how you deal with things, because even to this day, it's so wild to think about that. Like, I couldn't even imagine like making a fist at another human unless I was like in fear for my life at this point.
Yeah.
Where something that seems so natural, even if I was, sticking up for the underdog, something that seems so natural is now, like, to me, so
Abhorrent. Yeah.
So wild to think about.
Yeah.
So I got arrested for assault and battery, didn't make it to court, had a warrant out for my arrest when I was 16. A friend of mine, we were in the vehicle with his dad, and he got pulled over, and they asked for like information. I gave it to him, and they were like, unfortunately, like, you have a warrant out for your arrest, right? So one of my first really, really great experiences with a cop, should probably my second, right? It was good banter off my normal self, right? So, I was in the back of a cop car and things of that nature. And he must have been a newer cop, because like he said, like, another call came across the radio of like somebody running. Like there was like a chase going on, and he was like, man, why do they always get the fun ones? And I like said from the backseat, I was like, I can run if you want. And he was like, he started laughing. He was like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Yeah. Right. And, we kind of chatted all the way from DeLand to Daytona, which is where the juvenile detention center was. So it's about 25 minutes. And, he asked me what I wanted to be. And I was like, no, a cop. And he was like, well, you're not really on the right path for that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we had a really good conversation, and I didn't think much of it. And then he brought me into the juvenile detention center to get fingerprinted. And he said to the woman who was fingerprinting me, he said, take it easy on her. She's one of the good ones. Mm-hmm. And I took it in. It hits me more now than it hit me then, but it changed something for me, right? Of like okay, so now here's another person who sees something in me that I'm just unsure of what it is. And then I was in juvie for about 3 months. And I could see what he was talking about, right? Because I was so mentally mature, I didn't, you'd walk in the lines, right? Like all girls, and you'd walk by the boys, like as you're going on the way to the cafeteria and stuff. And these girls that I was with would be like constantly getting in trouble for like trying to talk to these boys and like slip them notes and all this other stuff. And that was something that never even crossed my mind, I'm just like, I'm just going to get done what I need to get done and like get out. Why would I ever want to talk to somebody who was like in the same situation as me? Like, what kind of relationship? No, thank you. And, there were some really wonderful women correctional officers there who very much were like, this is not for you. Like, this is not your life. And they saw something in me too, right? And then I got out of juvie 3 months later, and my dad sent me up here with my cousin Lisa, who's from Falls Village. Well, she's my mom's cousin, so she's my second cousin, so she's my mom's age. Her daughter Emily is 2 months younger than me. I always joke around with her because we're best friends now, and I always joke around with her of like, I was there for your birth. So like every year for her birthday, I come up with like a different story of how like I like, was in the delivery room. Yeah, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And like she's 2 months younger than me. Like
You said I had crazy fine motor skills. I was very advanced. Yeah.
obviously I was never really there. So they took me into their family home, and it was like my first experience of like, wow, there's like 2 parents here. This is a little wild. Like both parents are like full-time working. There's 2 parents. They come home, they sit at the table every night for dinner. And it was a great experience. And that's where I met my husband, right? So we were about to be 17. My husband actually went to elementary school with my cousin Emily from kindergarten up, right? And I saw him, I met him, and there's definitely something different.
Sparks flew.
I would say, if it wasn't just that, I think taking it outside of that, I remember there was our bedroom, me and my cousin Emily, our bedroom was on the 2nd floor. So she had like an emergency ladder just in case there was ever a fire. She was like, she's actually married to her boyfriend now, who was her boyfriend at the time. So I can say this. She's not going to get trouble by her mom.
Well, I would hope at this point
Yeah.
a relationship isn't so enmeshed.
Yeah.
That would be a possibility.
Yeah. So she, her boyfriend at the time, Jeremy, was like, he was going to sneak up. And I was like trying to convince Tyler, my husband, to sneak up too. And the first thing he said was, my mom wouldn't like that. And I was like, well, she doesn't have to know. And he was like, and my mom definitely wouldn't like that. And it took me like a step back, right? This is like one of the first people that I've ever met that was like around my age who had blatant boundaries of not going against their parents because like that respect level was there to do something that they wanted to do. And I was like, wow, I need to rethink some things, right? And now I very much understand why.
Yeah.
Very much understand why.
And obviously, like, a lot has transpired since you came up to Connecticut between, then and now. But I think a significant thing that's important to talk about is, like, what your relationship with your dad looks like having to set boundaries, because you've talked to me a lot about that, and, like, that knowing how much he means to you, like, that has to be incredibly challenging, and I think speaks to your personal growth, your work in therapy, and also the knowledge that you've gleaned from, like, working within the field.
Yeah, it's boundaries are hard.
Yeah.
They're hard. It doesn't matter how healthy they are for you. It doesn't matter why you put them in place, how you put them in place. No, there's no which way to cut it, right? The boundaries are tough. Putting the boundaries in place are hard. Keeping them are hard. And I think some people look at boundaries of like that they can't fluctuate, right? But if the boundaries are there to protect you, they can fluctuate because the amount of protection that you need, depending on where you're at in your life, changes, right? So I did set a boundary at one point with my dad before I got married. I didn't have him come to my wedding, which is still, I don't live my life in what ifs. It's just not how I do things. If I make a decision, I stick by it. But, still to this day, I'm like, even though it was a boundary and I agree with it and I still support it and I would do it again. Unfortunately, if I was in the exact same moment I was at that time, it is sad that I took that opportunity away from him, right? I'm an only child through my dad and I'm his daughter, and that was a tough thing to come to terms with. So, I didn't talk to my dad for about 2 years, and there was one day where I got the feeling to call him, and it was the the boundary was set because the thought process was, and the exact same reason why I changed the boundary and extended it to a different type of boundary, because the thought process that I had was, am I okay with watching you break yourself down? Right? Or am I not? Is it, do I watch you and be a part of this, this process that you're in and like this hurt that you're in? Or is it more protection for me and better for me to not be a part of it at all?
Yeah.
And at the time, I said, yes, at this time, like, it is more important for me it's too hurtful.
Yeah.
Right. It was about 2 years, and there was this feeling that I had in my chest, and Dad was like, I think I'm ready to reach out. And he answered the phone almost right away, and he said, oh, did somebody tell you I was in the hospital? And I was like, no. And he was that was the first time he was in the hospital for cirrhosis. Yep. And the relationship dynamic, it changed a little bit then, in the sense of, like, although my dad was not willing to admit that, he was an alcoholic or anything of that nature, or that he had a problem, it was because his sugar was high, because of the drinking. He was very much like, it's because I have diabetes. And I was like, oh, that's, I'm pretty sure that's not.
Yeah, cirrhosis. Anytime anyone has cirrhosis, I'm like, oh, alcoholism.
Yeah.
I'm never like, well, the Twizzlers.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah. So, the boundary changed a bit, in the sense of, like, I made things very clear of, like, nope, not appropriate. Nope, not appropriate. Nope, I'm not going to talk about that. And it was accepted, and it was open. And then, cirrhosis has happened a couple more times since then. And it's been a tough thing, because it's I opened up this boundary.
Yeah.
I'm the one who opened it. And in opening that, because of why I set them, I said at that time, right, that it meant more to me to have a relationship than I was strong enough. That's how I looked at it at the time, of, like, it meant more to me to have a relationship in the form I could take it than to not. And in turn, I think that was viewed as acceptance.
Oh, okay.
Of the situation. So,
yeah.
So that was a little difficult. And then, my perspective changed a little bit. The boundaries had to change again not when I had a kid, right? It changed when I knew I was ready to have a kid. So I think a lot of parents do this, especially when they're from this situation, is think about, like, when they're about to have a kid, or when they do have a kid, what will I do different than my parents? Right?
Yeah.
And then also there comes, I've always been so good at protecting myself emotionally, right? And physically. But the other side of that is, like, now I have this human that I need to put the work into to make sure that generational trauma does not continue. And if it does continue, in a sense, right, because trauma is going to happen. There's no way around it in one sense or another. It's the support that you have. It's the way you're able to process. But it's also, I don't want to be the reason for that. Yeah.
And how do you stay strong in those boundaries? And you talked about how they're hard to hold. Like, do you seek out community support? Do you have friends? Do you have professionals? Like, who are you leaning on?
Obviously there's always professionals, and I have professionals in my life, right? In my everyday life. I have such a strong support network and family here. My husband's wonderful. He's very emotionally aware. Has a great approach, which is great. And then, my best friend Ashley, but also I'm very close with my in-laws. Very close. My mother-in-law is my best friend. I will, be very clear on that. She is my everyday in my life.
Yeah.
Great grandma. She is a great mother. She's a great mother-in-law. She's definitely the rock and the backbone of our family. And she is able to give such a good unbiased approach and support for that. So that's my support network. And at work, right? I have a great support network. And that's what I do. I don't internalize. But also once a relationship starts feeling like, some people call it walking on eggshells. I like to call it the elephant in the room. I'm very uncomfortable with an elephant in the room. That's a lot to do with childhood, right? But the other side of that is, that's another reason why I'm so direct and clear. And conversation doesn't always have to be confrontation, right? So I like to address it. Let's discuss both of our sides of it. My dad came up here recently, and I really came to the determination of, and it's not that there is a talked about boundary in place or anything of that nature. I just kind of took a little bit of a step back, and I think he did as well. Because there was this, there's this inner feeling that I have, and because of this unprocessed, my perspective of it, right? I'm not a therapist. Because of this unprocessed things that are going on, and in the back of his mind, knowing what I do for work, right? And what I dedicated my life to, he does not love my communication style. And he views a lot of things that I do as an attack.
That's hard.
And I really came to the determination of having to take a step back and say, I looked at my inner self, and it's am I the problem, right? Let me break down my approach and how I communicate. And are there a couple of things that I could change? Absolutely. Right. But I'm really no different with anybody else. And as you know, right? I'm an open book through and through. I'm the same person in home, out of home, at work. So that part of it was just the way it was interpreted. So that was a little bit difficult for me to come to terms with, because it's there's nothing that I need to change at this time. After all was said and done, and I received my supports, and I took the inner time. So really it was back to the question, do you accept? Or do you just kind of take a step back and focus on yourself and your family and what that means to you? And that's what I did.
And do you have any advice for if anyone was listening who is having trouble either being a loved one of an alcoholic or setting boundaries? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest advice, boundaries are different for everyone, right?
Totally.
And I say that because when it becomes a boundary instead of an idea, is the sticking by it and the solidification of it, right? The more boundaries are going to bend and they're going to break, but the more you bend and break, the more the harder the boundaries have to get the next time around when you go to set them. It's kind of like a goal, right? If you have the same goal over and over again, it keeps getting harder the more you break that goal, because you stop believing in yourself and your word and your worth and your value. And then the other person starts thinking that these boundaries they're not hard set lines.
Need to flesh them.
Yeah. And so, and the next thing is safety is not just physical. Right? I think when you think are you safe, right? It's are you physically safe? That's the first thought that kind of pops in your head. But safety is mental and emotional. And it's the people that you have to care about as well, outside of this individual and this person that you love. And that process of having to protect yourself mentally and emotionally, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And carrying that weight, it can be relieving to let go of it for a little bit, even if it's just for a little bit.
And last question, if you could tell angry teenage Candace anything, what would you tell her?
Ooh, it's a really good question. I think it's easiest to touch on it in saying that now at this point in my life, I hate that even if I felt like I was doing the right thing at the time with like those physical altercations, to know that that there's like women out there and I've made my amends, right? I've put in the work to that, but that doesn't change the fact really that there very well could be some people out there that I've gotten into these altercations with as a kid, right? Myself, who I'm the reason why another woman might have trauma. Right? So if I could go back in time with the knowledge that I have now and say this could be a traumatic experience for this person,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Interesting. That's a very therapist, social work answer.
Yeah, I mean, but it's true, right?
Yeah,
because
no,
as you're
it's
doing like your
valid.
self-reflection, it's the women already have this feeling of needing to like look behind them. It's ingrained in us. It's our safety response, right? It's what we do. It's the feeling that saves us, right? In a lot of situations. So to know that I might have pushed that feeling on somebody, that safety response before they needed it,
Yeah.
or I'm the reason behind why they might have it a little bit more than what's required and what should ever be needed, is sad.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that this is probably pretty helpful information for a lot of different people. I think it is a very good story in the sense that, once again, it's amazing that you've ended up where you've ended. Like, successful in a very healthy relationship. You have like the family you've always really wanted with like your husband's family, having your son now who's very cute. I can say that not all babies are cute. I'll stand 10 toes down on that. This is a cute kid.
It's a cute kid.
Yeah.
I'm in for it.
Yeah, dude. I would hope so. But yeah, so this is like you're living this big, beautiful life. It's pretty exceptional.
It's so wild because I definitely had people in my life who have tried to use me as an example of like, you don't have to be a product of your upbringing.
Totally.
And I did that so quick. I'm like, no. I can't be the example, right? Because it's not like I did it on my own. It just so happened, and this is universe talking, or, whatever, the higher power is, right? Like, it just so happened that the right people stepped in at the right time, and I took exactly what I needed from them to overcome, survive, and be the person I am today, right? And I don't want to, I definitely don't want this to come across as that my dad was a really great dad.
Yeah.
It's not, and he had a perception, because I think because he was younger, right, that a lot of people don't have, where like a lot of times people have like plans for their kids, or want them to do this, or I don't want them to do that, or something of that nature. And, my dad was always very much of like, I don't care what you do with your life, like, just be a good person. And that stuck with me. And I really hope I'm living that. I try hard to live that. And a lot of times I don't have to try hard at all. It's just like a natural feeling. It's still hard to say that, right? It's still hard to say that, like, personally. But it definitely, he gave me my learning style, which has helped me in my career and life, and to be able to know a little bit about a lot of things. It's just like wonderful with his approach. It's just, I'm hopeful that some of the story, at least, right, is you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Boundaries don't have to be forever, and they're not a bad thing. It's a protection thing. Bruce, who used to work here, which Bruce, he gave me I did my internship with him for family wellness, and he has this wonderful perspective on codependency, which is it was a different approach to codependency that I had never heard before. And it was, codependency is not always a bad thing, right? You can never love somebody too much, but you can love them differently, right? And that's really stuck with me as I hold boundaries, and I set these things for my own emotional safety. I just need to love you differently.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been like weeks in planning. I'm glad we finally were able to work it out. Thank God.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, all good. Busy schedules. This is a busy place to work.
I actually locked my keys in my car.
Well, yeah, that was a big thing. Yeah, that was why this didn't happen last week at least. But yeah, all right, sweet. Thank you for being here. And tune into the Sober Spell next week, every Thursday, new episode.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.